Wait, you're a Bears fan and you're not subscribed to my channel? Before this video starts, make sure to 1. Hit the subscribe button below to catch all Bears content right here on this podcast. 2. Hit the bell notification because you, my friend, are a diehard Bears fan. And 3. Like this video and tell all the Bears fans you know about the channel. Alright, that's better. Now that you're actually subscribed to the channel, make sure to bear down and enjoy this video.
Now this is a podcast all about Bears. You either cheering for this team or just pulling your hair. I like to take a minute, just sit right back and tell you how I became the #1 Bears fan. That boy is Benny Hunter. Cake on the mic, cake on the mic, cake on the mic, cake on the mic. People, this the intro. Sacramento, California, born and raised. And Antelope is where I spend most of my days. You talk bad about my team, you must be a clown. This is Keek on the mic, so you know you better bear down. Bear down, bear down.
So, Bears fans, it is finally official. As Adam Schefter reports, former Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus is being hired as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And obviously, the Chicago Bears also consider Jim Caldwell and Dan Quinn, but they ultimately decided to go with Matt Eberflus, and a new era finally begins in Chicago. Before I go any further, I've been hearing a lot of Bears fans' opinions over social media, and the majority of Bears fans are not happy with this move. The first thing I want to say is give the man a chance, and I'll talk more about this during this podcast. Second of all, this was Ryan Poles' guy. There's been a lot of people saying, well, the McCaskies forced him into this. They forced him into hiring Matt Eberflus. No, like I mentioned in a couple of podcasts ago, Ryan Poles took full control of this interview process, of the coaching search, and he re-interviewed everyone on their list that they had for him, and he ultimately made the decision that Matt Eberflus will be the next Chicago Bears head coach. And for me, if Ryan Poles made the decision, that gives me comfort, and I trust Ryan Poles' judgment as he is our new GM, so as fans, we have to have some trust. So the Chicago Bears opt to go defensive with the defensive head coach. And even though he wasn't my top choice, everyone knows that my top choice was Brian Daboll. I knew a long time ago that that wasn't going to be the case. So the Bears opt to go for a defensive head coach. And I'm not too upset with the hire. So obviously with Matt Eberflus, the Bears are getting a true leader, a guy that has earned praise for creating a disciplined culture in Indy, and also a defensive mind that can get the most out of his players, and a coach that players and coaches will respect. And something that I want to note on this podcast today, as the Colts defensive coordinator, his defense ranked top 10 in takeaways of each of the last 4 years. Yes, maybe the numbers last season weren't as great as the previous years as a Colts DC, but something that remained consistent was the players' respect for him, how he was able to run that defense, and the takeaway, something that the Bears defense is trying to get back to. On a defensive standpoint, I am super excited about this move. Super excited about this move. With guys like Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, Jalen Johnson, Robert Quinn, right? I'm really excited to see what Matt Eberflus can do with the defensive pieces that we have. So obviously, going into this process, we all understood that the Chicago Bears were looking for a leader of men. They weren't particularly looking for an offensive guy, and they weren't really looking for a defensive guy, right? They were looking for a guy that can be a leader of men, that not only can get the most out of his players, just one player, a guy that can get the most out of all his players. So going through this process, I know a lot of Bears fans saying, oh, we need an offensive guy to develop Justin Fields and Justin Fields only. But that's not what the Bears were looking for. They wanted a guy that can develop all their players, a guy that can get the most out of all the players on the roster. So I'm not too mad about this move. I'll say until I'm blue in the face, he wasn't my top choice. But at the end of the day, he may end up being the best choice for the Chicago Bears and what the Bears were looking for. Some of the concerns I do have about Matt Eberflus, and these are just normal concerns, is who will be your offensive coordinator to develop Justin Fields? Obviously, he's a defensive guy. So going into his interview process, Eberflus had to have a plan in order for him to get the job, right? So that's what makes me comfortable. When Ryan Poles interviewed him for the second time, when it was just him and Ryan Poles definitely asked him, what is your plan? Who is going to be your offensive staff in order to develop Justin Fields? Because if he can get the offensive staff right, some guys that are able to develop Justin Fields, to me, this can turn into a really good hire for the Chicago Bears. Obviously, according to Adam Schefter, the Bears are already eyeing Eagles passing game coordinator Kevin Patillo. I'm not going to get too much into that. There's a couple of other guys that they can also reach out to be the next offensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. But whoever Eberflus has in mind, that is the most important hire for him as he starts his tenure as Chicago Bears head coach. The second concern that I have, and this was my concern a long time ago, and this would have been with any defensive head coach, is if that OC comes in and develops Justin Fields and the offense takes off and goes into the top 10, what is going to happen? They're going to begin a head coaching job and leaving, and we're going to have to begin a all new offensive coordinator, and Justin Fields probably have to learn a whole new offense. That's the only thing that's concerning to me. And that's why at the beginning, I was leaning towards the offensive head coach, because if the offensive head coach comes in, takes Justin Fields to the next level, at least they're the head coach and they can't leave, right? But overall, I am not mad about Matt Eberflus. I understand what the Bears are doing here. I get why they hired him. I think he was the best man for the job in terms of his leadership style. He gets the most out of his players. And overall, he had to have a plan for Justin Fields in order to get the job. I'm pretty sure Ryan Poles wouldn't have hired Matt Eberflus if he didn't have a plan for Justin Fields. And for most Bears fans, I understand it's not the sexy name. It's not Brian Dable. It's not Byron Leftwich. It's not Brian Flores even. It's not the sexy name that people wanted, but let's give the man a chance. And something that I want to leave with you guys before I end this podcast. This is a reminder for all Bears fans. Sean McDermott with Josh Allen. Brandon Staley with Justin Herbert. Defensive coaches can succeed with young quarterbacks. Just because Eberflus is a defensive coordinator doesn't mean Justin Fields is screwed. So I'm asking you guys this. You guys may not be happy with the Chicago Bears choice to hire Matt Eberflus, but just as a fan and as an optimistic fan, just give him a chance. He may surprise you. And I know it's super hard because the Chicago Bears, time and time again, have failed to pick the right head coach to lead the franchise. But I'm asking you once again, just be a fan, try to be optimistic about this hire, and let's see what Matt Eberflus can do for the Chicago Bears. So, like always, comment down below and let me know how you're feeling about this hire. Let me know if you're happy, if you're mad, and let's talk about it. But as of now, former Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus is being hired as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. So let's get ready for the ride and see what happens. But before I let you guys go, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms. Make sure you share this episode of Kick on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, I'll be back for an all-new Bears podcast right here on Kick on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You can go and subscribe cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic.